The story is making headlines this hour. South Korean Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se tells his U.S. counterpart John Kerry that Seoul is concerned about Japan's refusal to admit historic wrongdoings as the two allies seek ways to alleviate tension in Northeast Asia. The victims of sexual slavery by wartime Japan commemorate the start of their weekly protest rally 22 years ago as Tokyo's ruling party sets the revision of the country's pacifist constitution. Plus, extreme weather conditions grip the world. While much of the U.S. is suffering from the Arctic cold spell, other parts of the world are being roasted by a heat wave. These stories and more next on Primetime News. Good evening and welcome to Primetime News. It's Wednesday, January 8th here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I am Yoo-ji.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, today marks the 22nd year since Korean victims of sexual slavery by wartime Japan started their weekly protests outside the Japanese embassy in Korea. The
process continues to this day, with the participants calling on Japan to acknowledge its wartime atrocities and offer legal compensation. Our Yeon-ji reports on the ongoing demand for justice.
On Wednesday, two surviving victims of sexual enslavement by the Japanese military during World War II stood across from the Japanese embassy in Seoul, as they've done so many times in the past, along with human rights activists and civic groups. For the last 22 years, those coerced into sexual slavery for the Japanese military have held a demonstration every Wednesday, which makes it the longest rally ever in the world. The group has demanded Japan fully admit to and reveal the truth about its war crimes, offer an official apology and legal reparations, punish those responsible for the crimes, accurately report on the crimes in history textbooks, and build memorials and museums in remembrance of the victims. However, the victims, also known as former comfort women, feel Japan has not accepted any of their demands. Japanese politicians continue to make comments that defame the victims and distort history. Among the 237 Koreans recognized by the government as victims of sexual slavery under the Japanese military, only 56 of them are alive today. Meanwhile, Korea and Japan are engaged in a battle in cyberspace over a Comfort Women Memorial that was set up in a park near the Glendale Public Library in California last July. The Glendale Memorial is a replica of this one installed directly across the street from the Japanese embassy in Seoul, which depicts a girl dressed in traditional Korean clothing. The White House says a netizen submitted an online petition last week seeking protection for the Glendale statue. This petition was filed in protest of another petition submitted last month that asked authorities to remove the Comfort Women Memorial in Glendale. About 120,000 people signed the petition demanding its removal, whereas the one seeking protection for the memorial had about 3,000 signatures as of Tuesday morning, local time. The White House's policy is to respond to a petition that has received 100,000 signatures or more within 30 days after being submitted. Yeon-ji, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, over in Japan, the country's ruling party has set constitutional reform and continued visits to the Yasukuni Shrine as key goals for the coming year.
The move is widely expected to further escalate tensions in Northeast Asia. Yeon-ji has the details.
Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party has unveiled its key goals for the coming year: reform the constitution and continue with visits to the controversial Yasukuni War Shrine. During a general meeting on Tuesday, the party decided to, quote, make practical constitutional reforms without damaging the original purpose of the country's pacifist constitution. The party also vowed not to wage war and agreed to uphold the tradition of visiting the Yasukuni Shrine, which honors 2.5 million Japanese war dead, including 14 Class A war criminals. With regard to education, the party promised to ensure that students will not be taught a pessimistic concept of history by putting in place measures for making and adopting textbooks. Those plans, however, are expected to face a strong backlash from Korea and China. The biggest concern being brought up in both countries is that Japan is trying to become a country that is allowed to engage in war by amending its pacifist constitution. The current constitution, adopted after the nation's defeat in World War II, bans the country from using military force.
Should the Japanese leader avoid facing Japan's history of militaristic invasion and not take sincere steps toward reflecting on its past wrongdoing, the country will be led down a wrongful and dangerous path.
The decision to continue visits to the war shrine is also expected to draw criticism not only from Seoul and Beijing, but many countries around the world, just as it did after Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's latest visit there. In line with its goals for the coming year, the Abe administration has also officially launched a secretariat of the National Security Council that will serve as the control tower for the government's security policies. Yeon-ji, Arirang News.
And that diplomatic tension in Northeast Asia was thoroughly discussed at the Korea-U.S. talks between high officials in Washington on Tuesday.
Both South Korea's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se and his U.S. counterpart John Kerry agreed to strengthen efforts to promote peace and cooperation in the region. Yeon-ji reports.
Korea has delivered its message to the United States that history disputes remain a stumbling block to improving relations in Northeast Asia. Following an hour-long meeting with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry in Washington Tuesday, Korean Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se said the current situation in the region calls for sincere actions, adding that the two agreed on the need to alleviate tensions.
Secretary Kerry and I also recognize the growing uncertainty pervading Northeast Asia in recent times. In particular, I pointed out that historical issues stand in the way of reconciliation and cooperation in this region.
While neither Yoon nor Kerry directly mentioned Japan by name, the comments are almost certainly aimed at Tokyo, as they come just weeks after Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's visit to the Yasukuni Shrine escalated tensions with Korea and China. The shrine honors Japan's war dead, including several Class A war criminals. The two officials also agreed to urge Pyongyang to get rid of its nuclear program.
We call on North Korea to denuclearize. We will not accept North Korea as a nuclear state, nor as a nuclear-armed state, and nor will the international community abide by that.
Emphasizing the two countries stand united, Kerry added the United States is fully committed to the defense of South Korea and said it will continue to modernize its military capabilities in preparation against any threat. Yurian, Arirang News.
And in the latest sign of commitment to regional security by the U.S., Washington said it will deploy more troops and heavy tanks in South Korea to rebalance its forces across the Asia-Pacific.
800 additional troops, battle tanks, and vehicles are set to start a 9-month deployment on February 1st in Gyeonggi-do province, just south of the demilitarized zone separating the two Koreas. The U.S. already has roughly 28,000 troops stationed in Korea. The move comes at a time of heightened tensions on the peninsula after last month's execution of Chang Song-taek, the once powerful uncle of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. And former NBA star Dennis Rodman has never shied away from controversy, but he took things to a new level on Tuesday, having a complete meltdown on CNN over his latest trip to North Korea.
When the CNN anchor asked Rodman whether he would use his visit to raise the case of Kenneth Bae, a Korean-American who has been imprisoned in the North for over a year on vague charges of hostile acts against his state, Rodman erupted into a foul-mouthed rant in which he said Bae deserved to be serving time. He also tried to defend his heavily criticized basketball diplomacy tour. Rodman is currently in Pyongyang for an exhibition game against the North Korean national team Wednesday. And what they're saying is a birthday present for the regime's leader, Kim Jong-un.
2013 could be characterized as a tumultuous year for South Korea's regional tensions, primarily with North Korea and Japan.
For more on some of the diplomatic challenges facing Seoul in the new year, we bring in our foreign affairs correspondent Hwang Sung-hee in the studio. Now, Sung-hee, let's begin on the Korean peninsula. What should we expect?
Well, Ji-hye, that's a very difficult question to answer because we really don't know what to expect from North Korea, of course, it being one of the most unpredictable regimes in the world. However, one thing for sure is that South Korea wants to start off the new year on good terms with its northern neighbor. Now, if you watched President Park Geun-hye's New Year's press conference earlier this week, you would have noticed that a great deal of emphasis was put on mending ties with the North, touting the benefits it would bring to both Koreas.
지금 국민들 중에는 이 통일 비용이 너무 많이 들지 않겠느냐. 그래서 굳이 통일을 할 필요가 있겠는가 하고 생각하는 그런 분들도 계시는 것으로 압니다. 그러나 저는 한마디로 통일은 대박이다. 이렇게 생각을 합니다.
So what are some of the steps we can expect to see this year in terms of the Park administration making efforts to mend ties with the North?
Well, Sean, following President Park's press conference, Seoul made a proposal to Pyongyang to hold a round of family reunions for those separated during the Korean War in the 1950s. Now, the government suggested that they take place sometime during the Lunar New Year holiday, which falls in the last week of January. The offer to hold the humanitarian event falls in line with the president's principle of starting with the lowest hanging fruit, something that is more easily achievable, and then working up to the more difficult tasks at hand. In her New Year's speech, President Park said that if the North says yes to her reunion proposal, it would be an important first step in opening up a new era of inter-Korean relations. Now, we are still waiting for an answer from Pyongyang, but most experts believe that it will be accepted, as North Korean leader Kim Jong-un had also expressed hopes for better ties between the two Koreas in his own New Year's speech. Experts say North Korea's response will be an important barometer for Kim's sincerity in mending ties with the South.
Sung-hee, so what are some of the variables that could get in the way of Seoul's efforts to better inter-Korean ties?
Well, GA, experts point to possible provocations by the North stemming from instability within the regime following the execution of Kim Jong-un's uncle Chang Song-taek late last year. Now, Pyongyang has a history of stoking tensions on the peninsula to secure internal harmony. Officials in Seoul say Pyongyang may launch a provocation early this year, sometime between late January and early March, which is when the two Koreas hold military exercises. A fourth nuclear test could also be in the cards, and if that happens, that would really disrupt these efforts to mend ties. In her New Year's speech, President Park made it clear that North Korea's nuclear program is the biggest obstacle to a reunified Korea.
And we also saw frosty ties with Japan last year. Any hope of us mending ties there?
Well, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's controversial visit to the Yasukuni Shrine late last year really enraged Seoul and has further frayed ties between the two countries. Now, unfortunately, the prospects for better relations don't look all that good, at least for the first half of this year, as there are a number of events in Japan that have raised diplomatic tensions with Korea in the past. Now, Japan will mark its annual Takeshima Day on February 22nd, which calls on Seoul to return Korea's easternmost islets of Dokdo to Japan. In March, Japan will announce the screening results of its history textbooks and unveil its diplomatic blue paper in April. Now, these events are likely to further sour relations between Seoul and Tokyo, which means it will take some time before we see the leaders of the two countries sit down for a bilateral summit, the first one since they took office.
Hopefully we'll see some let-up in tensions in the region. Thank you very much, Sung-hee, for joining us this evening.
My pleasure.
Before your day ends and another begins, get the latest news live from Seoul.
Residents whose features restrictions is on the rise.
Closing ceremony.
Expert analysis from Asia's heartbeat.
The legislature, circumstances.
With a viewpoint only Korea's global network can provide.
The United States, the latest report.
Unrivaled access from a team always on standby.
This meeting came on the news. We're trying to cover up the South's true intentions.
The Korean government says the domestic economic recovery is gathering momentum despite lingering global economic uncertainties. In its monthly Green Book report released on Wednesday, the finance ministry said major economic indicators like production and investment improved last October and November compared to the third quarter of last year. It also cited stabilizing prices and expanding employment. However, the report also pointed to the weak Japanese yen and the U.S. Federal Reserve's bond-buying stimulus tapering as major uncertainties that could hurt the nation's growth rate in the long run. Over now to Korea's boom in the medical tourism industry. The health tourism surplus topped $100 million for the first time last year, thanks largely to increased spending by overseas travelers seeking health care and medical services in the country. The Bank of Korea said Wednesday that the country's income from medical tourism was $187 million in the first 11 months of last year, growing more than 35% from the same period in 2012. During the same period, however, local residents' overseas spending on medical tourism decreased by more than 11%. Korea saw its first surplus in the medical tourism industry in 2011.
And taking that to Las Vegas, where the Consumer Electronics Show, the biggest technology event of the year, is underway. It's not just about gadgets anymore, but automakers are also getting in on the action. Our Kim Young-gil has more.
By embracing smartphone and mobile computing technologies, automakers are beginning to blur the line between our digital and driving lives. BMW made a splash at the opening day of this year's Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas by demonstrating a way to control its new i3 electric car using Samsung's Galaxy Gear smartwatch and Bluetooth wireless technology.
Using Samsung's Galaxy Gear, you can remotely control the car's temperature, recharge the car battery, and operate the door locks.
Mercedes-Benz, not to be outdone, is using the Pebble smartwatch to show off a new way to check up on vehicle conditions.
We see the total mileage, we see the tire pressure, so you have full information of your vehicle on your watch.
Audi teamed up with Google to bring Android to cars. An Android tablet was designed to provide in-car entertainment such as music and streaming videos. The owner can also search for apps in the Google Play Store. This year's CES is proving that more and more automakers are rushing to make sure there is no disconnect between the gadgets we use each and every day and the vehicles that get us where we're going. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
We now move to the extreme weather conditions gripping different parts of the globe. Arctic temperatures in North America and extreme heat waves in South America have been making headlines over the last few days.
For more, we connect live to our Kim Ji-yeon at the News Center. Now, Ji-yeon, let's start in North America, which is being slammed by brutal cold snap.
Sean, hard to believe, but temperatures have dipped below freezing in all 50 U.S. states now. Take a look at the city of Chicago, where temperatures came in at minus 30 degrees Celsius on Tuesday. You can see Lake Michigan and some of the city's most famous skyscrapers frozen like popsicles. Over to the East Coast in New York City, where it was minus 15.5 degrees Celsius on Tuesday, setting a new record. Around 14 counties in the state of New York declared a state of emergency due to the frigid conditions, closing schools and airports. Flights going in and out of the region were suspended, and more than 500 passengers taking regular train services in Chicago were left stranded in their compartments for 14 hours when the trains they were traveling in got stuck in ice and snow. Some cities like Milwaukee, St. Louis, and Chicago experienced freezing temperatures that dipped to below minus 40 degrees. That's colder than some of the most remote places on Earth. The average temperatures in the South Pole are known to be around minus 34 degrees, even lower than those found on planet Mars, which has around average temperatures of around minus 25 to 31 degrees.
So, Jian, what's causing these record low temperatures?
Well, experts attribute the rush of cold air due to something called a distorted polar vortex, which is a circulation of strong upper-level winds that normally surround the northern pole in a counterclockwise direction. Normally, a polar low-pressure system keeps the bitter cold air locked in the Arctic regions of the northern hemisphere, but this can become distorted and dip further south, which is what much of the United States is experiencing right now. But it's a different story on the southern part of the hemisphere, where high pressure is bringing in the heat from the equator, which is leading to extremely hot weather conditions. In the northern part of Argentina, the mercury level shot up to 50 degrees, the highest in the region in a century. At least 10 people have died due to the extreme heat wave there.
Well, some say this may be a side effect of global warming. So what do the experts say?
Well, that's a hotly debated question right now. And yes, some researchers say the Arctic air mass that the U.S. is experiencing could be related to global warming because it coincides with unusually high temperatures in other regions, like the Slovenian Alps in Slovenia, that are usually cold at this time of the year.
Because we've got this very strong westerly jet stream blowing across the UK, it's tending to draw a lot of warm air up from the Mediterranean, also from further afield, such as the tropical Atlantic. So lots of warm air moving up across Spain, into Italy, and into parts of southeastern Europe.
So how long are the abnormal temperatures expected to last in North America?
Well, the U.S. National Weather Service says it expects this Arctic air mass to continue until Friday. Authorities are advising people to stay inside whenever possible and layer clothing if you have to go outside.
All right, thanks, Jian, for the report. That was our Kim Jian reporting to us in extreme weather conditions live from the News Center. With the Olympics nearing, President Park Geun-hye visited athletes at the National Training Center to show her support.
Stephen Che joins us in the Sports Center with that story and more. Stephen.
Hey guys, President Park greeted figure skater Kim Yeon-ji, speed skaters Lee Sang-hwa and Mo Tae-bum, and other Olympic-bound athletes on the 30-day mark before the Games. At the Taeneung National Training Center, the president offered words of encouragement to the hard-training men and women representing South Korea at the Games. They're going to need all they could get, all the help they can get to meet the nation's goal of a top 10 medal finish, including 4 gold medals. Now, Korea will be sending about 35 athletes to compete in up to 6 sports for the 98 gold medals up for grabs in Sochi. Now moving on to football, South Korean men's national team manager Hong Myung-bo says he wants to talk to Park Ji-sung about playing in the World Cup. He said that he would like to seriously discuss having him lead the squad one last time. Now, Park's father said that a face-to-face meeting would be welcomed but wouldn't likely change things. The superstar captained the national team at his 3rd World Cup in South Africa in 2010 before retiring from international play. Now off to football news abroad. Sunderland took down Manchester United 2-1 in the first leg of England's Capital One Cup semi-finals. The first goal came in the first half extra time as Man U's Ryan Giggs put the ball in his own net. They came back to equalize, but their hopes were dashed as a penalty was converted by the Black Cats in the 64th minute. Sunderland's defense was given high marks while Ki Sung-young helped shore up the midfield. It's time for Wednesday's top matchup starting in the KBL. The Orions defeated the Thunders 78-72, but now it's the game of the night. It's the LG Sakers taking on the KT Sonic Boom in Changwon. Now LG pounds the paint while KT plays the perimeter. KT's up by 4 at the half. Now in the 3rd, LG comes alive as Jefferson drops 24 of his 28 points there. And now it goes back and forth in the 4th. But it's KT's Cho Sung-min who sinks his 6th three-pointer to put his team up with seconds remaining. He ends with 26 points for the night and leads KT to a win, 87-85. Now it's the V-League. First place Samsung Hwajae faced off against last place KEPCO. Now it's a battle in the first set, but Samsung takes it with 25 points to KEPCO's 22. Now that's the most that KEPCO will score in a set as Samsung puts on the Jets and completes the sweep. Leo Martinez slams 27 winners and Samsung tacks on 3 points in the standings. Now that does it for me here in the Sports Center. This has been Stephen Chang. Check back at midnight for the latest in the world of sports.
While many across the globe are dealing with extreme weather conditions, we here in Korea have had a rather mild winter weather as of late.
But I hear we are in for a cold snap. For details, let's go over to our Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center. Bo-kyung, tell us more.
Good evening, guys. The cold weather is moving in, and the first cold wave of the season has been issued for Seoul. In fact, most of the central regions, including Gyeonggi-do, Gangwon-do, and Chungcheongbuk-do provinces, are under cold wave watches as well. And the strong wind watch, that is, has been issued for the west coast regions and parts of Jeju Island. Taking a look at the current conditions, the nation is under the influence of a cold high pressure front, which is why we're seeing cloudy skies across the map. Now, tomorrow morning, numbers will dip to -9 degrees and the cold should continue through Friday. Otherwise, the mountains of Jeju could get up to 40 centimeters of snow. Looking ahead at tomorrow's readings, Seoul reaches -3 degrees while Gwangju and Busan peak at -1 and 4 degrees respectively. Taking a look at other regions, Jeju hits 2 degrees while Dokdo and Mount Kumgang top out at -1 and -7 degrees respectively. Well, that's all for now, and back to you guys.
Thanks, Bo-kyung. And that's a broadcast on this Wednesday night. I'm Yoo-ji Hae in Seoul.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.